God of War Ragnarok makes you feel like a god, tearing through hundreds of powerful enemies. So what if instead of being an unstoppable god, I turned the difficulty up to the highest setting, used only the starting chains, axe, and shield, and banned all upgrades? No skills, no armor, no enchantments, all level 1, let's go. Kratos' story started out with an upgrade, since I hadn't played the game since it came out like 2 years ago. And just like these game files, I was not prepared for this playthrough because my total playing time more than tripled once I was done. I also needed a quick recap of the first game.
There are consequences to killing a god!
Why? How do you know? How do you know?
Yeah, okay, that's enough, I think. Atreus and I were going for a sleigh ride that turned into a sleigh ride when Freya tried to kill me, but we made it back and Atreus said a tearful goodbye to Fenrir. Fresh start, here we go. But first, a few things to prove I'm actually doing this challenge and not cheating. You can tell I'm using the default armor because visually it won't change throughout the entire game. It's also impossible to decrease the difficulty from Give Me God of War, so once I'm on it, I'm stuck on it. I'll also create a long proof video with all boss fights and any hard fights, which you can find linked in the description. Alright, now continue. I had to find Atreus, and since this was the early game, I had to fight these raiders and this dumbass bear. Wait, that's Atreus? I mean, I had to fight my dumbass son. And Fimbulwinter sucked, but the early enemies were mostly okay.
You seem like a calm and reasonable person, are you?
Thor, this isn't God of Friendship. Overall, this fight scene went insanely hard.
Oh no. I say when you're done.
I died a few times, but got through Thor in one piece. Odin invited Atreus to Asgard, and Kratos was pissed. Also, like right before this, the game made me equip new attachments, so I immediately took those off. I needed the worst setup possible, and the game didn't force me to unlock skills even in this tutorial, so I wouldn't be doing that. I fought my first mini-boss in the Huntress, and after dying a few times, the game forced me to use a light runic that I picked up, but when I reloaded an autosave at that point, it didn't make me do it. Atreus took me to a giant temple and showed me some stuff about Ragnarok and how these dogs got freed and it would cause Ragnarok or something. I kind of wasn't paying attention.
Shout out all my dogs at the crib.
Also, Tyr was going to lead the armies to Ragnarok, so I guess we needed him too. I went to the realm between realms with Brock and Sindri to see their house, which I would mooch off for the rest of the game. I did have a problem though. Freya broke my original shield, so I'd need to craft a new one. And I picked the Dauntless Shield since I could parry, but I also kept this at level 1 for the whole game. The game once again forced me to add a light runic attack, but when I reloaded the save, I took this off. Having an actual advantage in this game meant I might actually enjoy the challenge, which was unacceptable. Brock and Sindri also turned Mimir into a jack-o'-lantern so we could more easily travel between realms. And now I could explore a bit. Also, I forgot Nornir chests allow me to increase health, so no doing any of those or grabbing these dewdrops that also boost Kratos' skills. We traveled through Svartalheim to Nidavellir, and Mimir suggested we take down these mining rigs that were abusing the dwarves' labor and resources.
So, which way do we go?
Kratos, you're the only one that can stop this. Yeah, this is why the dwarves hate us. We said hi to this guy Durlin, who gave us a find, which, after some lizard fighting, we found out was actually directions to Tyr. I got another challenge as I had to fight this Dreki that had ice and lightning attacks, and it killed me repeatedly. Once I killed the Dreki, it gave me a light runic attack for my blades that I didn't equip. Atreus wanted to ride Splash Mountain, but we settled instead for playing a game of Murder the Raven and row this thing where I had to beat off lizards. Okay, no, like in the sense that and this was not even close to the biggest train wreck of this challenge. Okay, let's just cut forward. We finally got to ride Splash Mountain into this cave and fought our way to Tyr. Unfortunately, along the way, the game forced me to pick up a relic and equip it to progress. There was no way to avoid this, but I could simply not use it. So, on the honor system now, though you could literally just check my video showing most of the major fights as proof. We made it to Tyr's door, but had to fight some Einarjar first, and even though these guys were just level 2 and would get much worse throughout the game, I learned to hate them more than just about any other enemy type. I killed them, and we met Tyr, who immediately ran away like a loser, and honestly the theme of the game was this guy we freed being a loser because he refused to help fight, which in hindsight it was obvious why he didn't, but still pissed me off. And fighting the Einarjar on the way to Tyr was annoying because most of the time these guys would spawn in large groups, making dodging very difficult, but more on that later. When I got to Tyr, Kratos was pissed. Okay, damn, why is he 8 feet tall locked up? His ass should be dunking on the court. Tyr didn't help us fight, but we made it to Brock and Sindri's where I switched over to Atreus. I went with Sindri to Midgard to talk to Freya, and the Atreus sections would quickly become my favorite because even without upgrades, they played out mostly the same as any normal playthrough, whereas the rest of the game felt like this. Atreus spoke to this giant snake that just said Ironwood, and I fought my way to Freya. Our meeting did not go well. And on the way back, Sindri decided to overshare like crazy.
Before you were born, there was an accident at the forge. I am your father.
Excuse me? Oh, also he killed Brock.
Whatever, Loke.
Sindri, what the hell is wrong with you? There's only one OG Loke.
Yeah. It's your man OG Loke in the house, baby.
We snuck back to Sindri and Brock's house for a nice breakfast, and Kratos did not play when it came to sausage. Man is basically Joey Chestnut of the Nine Realms. But sadly, after an hour of eating sausage, it was time to go to Alfheim to see Groa's Jotun shrine that might help us progress the plot. Alfheim introduced both dark and light elves, and these light elves tore me up. We saw the Lake of Souls, and I proceeded to get bodied by every group of light elves. They had a quick range attack and easily one-shot me, so focusing on multiple enemies at once made this tough. This group of 2 managed to waste 45 minutes of my time before I managed to just rage them off the ledge.
Whoa, you can really jump.
Yeah, Tyr can really jump off a cliff for all he helped us. Another group shortly after had even more light elves and nightmares, so I struggled for another 45 minutes. Kratos almost let his intrusive thoughts win by touching this light, and Atreus stuck his hand into Groa's shrine, where we learned about Ironwood and the prophecy to take down Odin.
We can win Ragnarok.
We are not present in any of this.
Good point, not our problem. At this point, I also unlocked resurrection stones, which I did keep on me, but since you can only hold one at a time, these weren't super useful, and I ended up using very few since I mostly just hoarded them. And this was just about the only advantage I gave myself in this challenge, and don't worry, I still wanted to quit the challenge many, many times. I had to fight even more light elves while leaving this place, and I watched Tyr's 8-foot tall ass get taken down by one warrior, so I had to fight this boss Alva alone. Mini boss fights in this game were generally better than the random fights with 3 to 5 enemies at once, since I could just focus on dodging and countering the one enemy. I still died a lot here, but somehow this felt less painful than the fights leading up to Groa's shrine. I killed Alva, and on our way out, we decided to go for a swim with Brock in the Lake of Souls. Well, I mean, I'm sure part of him is in here somewhere. And wow, this would have been so much easier if we just did a little high dive jump into here in the first place. And after escaping, we got to fight some dark elves who were just as annoying as the light elves. Atreus and I finally made it through and could go home.
We do not need to rush. We should see this desert for ourselves.
Anyway, as I said, we could go home. And when we got back, immediately Kratos started arguing about food.
Atreus. Mine.
Atreus was also pissed that Kratos kept refusing the prophecy, and he got so mad that he hallucinated he was in Dune. Atreides, yeah, close enough. I found out Atreus was now in Ironwood, and I met Angrboda, another giant. We saw Loki's prophecy and found out that Kratos dies. Yeah, I could have told you that. Okay, now what is this? Dog of War? Huh. At this point, I'd gotten my fill of Ironwood, but fortunately, the game didn't see it that way.
I mean, unless you still want to leave.
Yeah.
I can stay.
Atreus! So I had to continue slowly through picking fruit, exploring, and some fighting. And even though I'm glossing over the gameplay for this part, you'll notice Atreus' health and rage automatically upgraded, despite me never upgrading anything in Atreus' skill tree, but there wasn't much I could do about that. I also found out that the fate of the rest of the giants was on me, and Angrboda gave me their souls in marble form. Terrible idea. Okay, intrusive thoughts, these probably taste so good, let me eat one. Now, you'd think we're all done here, but why not? Let's clear out these caves for Angrboda before leaving. Let me go. The game could hear me complain about how long this section was, so naturally the next step was to throw in a boss fight against Angrboda's grandma. This was one of the easiest boss fights, and we destroyed Gryla's cauldron, so she had to stop stealing animal souls or something.
Do I have to leave?
Not if you don't want.
I want to leave. This is a hostage situation. I finally left Ironwood for Midgard and got bodied by these enemies for a bit before reuniting with Kratos. And after killing more enemies, it was time for another boss fight. This fight wasn't terrible, and after the first stage, the game gave me a new rage mode. That was pretty much useless because it healed me instead of letting me do more damage, and honestly, I got one shot so many times in this game that adding a tiny bit of health didn't do much. Okay, this was a bad example, but you get the point. I finally beat the Valkyrie to find out that it was Freya. And what is this? Bear of War. Wow, these just keep getting worse. Freya decided to form an alliance with me instead of killing me. Being a hater of Odin is that powerful. So we headed to Vanaheim to break Freya's curse that bound her to Midgard. I had to fight plants and these wolvers, which were super annoying because of how fast and overly aggressive they were. And after dying a bunch, I killed the wolvers and we got to meet Freyr, aka the God of Peace, which is the opposite of this game. Go to hell, dude. Freya and I still needed to find the source of her curse, so I got bodied by these green things and this frost ancient until I killed them, and then had to fight more wolves, which wound up wasting 20 more minutes. Brutal game design. Kratos opened up about his firstborn child Calliope, and who could forget the classic abandon your daughter QuickTime event.
Mother, please!
But opening up that trauma led to even more trauma, because I would soon get demolished by the Einherjar. These enemies were so mean, and this specific Einherjar just spammed attacks that at higher levels became unblockable and would infuriate me for the rest of the game. I tried to just focus on one so that the other wouldn't level up, which is another major issue with Give Me God of War difficulty. Enemies randomly level up in combat, and if you don't stun them quick enough, they regain health and get even more aggressive. And the fun part was that more enemies spawned in until this flame beast spawned, and I had to kill that too. This was not fun. But don't worry, even after wasting about an hour, it would get worse. I had a fight with the Noken, and after dying to these guys a bunch of times, I realized that I could just run past them. As I said earlier, the game would get much worse fast, because I had to fight a massive group of Einherjar, and this took me nearly 3 hours. The amount of damage I dealt was so minimal, whereas I got one-shot by everyone. Does God hate me? I'm not sure, but God of War definitely hates me. And I'm underselling how difficult this was because there were so many powerful enemies all spawned in at once that I had to take on with no help. After enough suffering, I finally beat this section, and I'd have to come back here for a second battle, but later on I figured out a much better strategy for killing Einherjar. Still took forever though.
He's desecrated every memory I have of home.
Be glad you have a home to remember fondly.
Okay, Kratos, not everything is a contest. Soon, I was faced with a mini-boss who killed me a few dozen times, but also wasn't as bad as some of the other bosses. And now it was finally time to fight Nidhogg and break Freya's curse. As I said earlier, boss fights in this game were great, because even though they were a bit of a challenge, they mostly had checkpoints. So I at least didn't lose all my progress every time I died. And after some more grinding, I killed Nidhogg. Freya and Kratos had a heart-to-heart after the fight, and she didn't really forgive him, but I think we're okay for now. Freya gave me this amulet so I could have more enchantments. I don't even know what those are at this point because the challenge says I can't equip them. And with Freya now able to fight, clearing these Einherjar wasn't as painful. We also found out that Skull and Hadi were in Vanaheim, aka the dogs that were part of the Ragnarok prophecy. And after a little fight, Freya and Freyr were reunited and made up before Freya and I headed back to Brock and Sindri's house. Meanwhile, Atreus really wanted to go to Asgard, which everyone else opposed to for obvious reasons.
Oh, who am I kidding? I can't go to Asgard.
Liar. I had to climb this giant wall and got to meet everyone's favorite character, Heimdall. He forced me to fight some Einherjar and hold up. Did I hit Heimdall here? Then Thor showed up. Then Odin showed up. Then I met Sif, Thor's wife. Then Thrud, Thor's daughter.
Got time to talk about it?
Too many people. Thor and I went to Muspelheim to find a mask for Odin, and it immediately got awkward.
Come look at this. Whenever you're ready.
Ready for what? Thor and I fought some guys, and I tricked him into going off alone so I could visit Surtur's shrine, where I met Angrboda and saw Surtur's prophecy.
Looks like they even became friends. Good friends.
And found out that he would cause Ragnarok. I went back with Thor to find this mask piece, and soon after bringing it to Odin, switched back to Kratos and the gang. Kratos' next plan was to find the Norns to learn his fate. Tyr wasn't helpful, as per usual.
Odin imprisoned you in the first place. He's terrified of you.
Terrified of you? Sorry guys, this playthrough long as hell. Oh, and Brock gave me back the shield that Freya broke earlier, but sadly it was now level 4, so my odds of using it were as good as Tyr's odds of being useful. On the sled, I told Freya about the giant prophecies and how I don't care about them.
Death can happen when it earns me.
Damn, it's earned me plenty of times then. Anyway, we had to go search in multiple spots for the Norns, and first was a dead end which resulted in this fight that was brutal. These raiders were extremely quick, and after killing them, they would respawn and be even faster. On top of that, I had to fight a giant troll, and even more undead raiders spawned in. I mean, there's literally 5 at once. What do I do here? The hard part was trying to focus on so many targets at once, especially because they had a mix of close and ranged attacks. After a slow grind of 3 hours, in which I killed all the raiders and spent about 10 minutes just slowly chipping away at this troll's health with my axe, I finally beat this part, which was all for nothing since the Norns weren't even over here. But luckily the next place I checked had an ambush that I could run away from, so that's exactly what I did. And the dogs were following the scent of the Norns, but to me it smelled a lot like bullshit. Until I finally came to a mini gauntlet of enemies, starting with a couple of tiny sections that took an embarrassing amount of time, since now the enemies were starting to level up more.
I feel something.
After attempting that fight for 30 minutes, I don't. And this traveler enemy type felt ridiculously easy to kill after the battles I fought to get here. But don't worry, the Norns still had more enemies between me and them. Some dark elves, a Gulan, some wisps, another dark elf, more Gulans, nightmares, and a witch. And okay, wow, the range from downtown is insane. After all that, I had to battle a frost phantom before I finally went into this mountain to the Norns, where I started hallucinating and oh my god, let me progress through the plot. Yeah, it's depressing how much time I wasted on this, but now I actually made it to the Norns.
You will die, Kratos of Sparta.
Okay, wow, I could have told you that without wasting hours of my life, but they did reveal that I get to kill Heimdall, and probably die a lot on the way. Brock and Sindri were on board enough, so Brock took me to Svartalheim to see the Lady of the Forge, despite Sindri's protests. And what should have been a quick fight through the sewers took me many attempts, but I cleared out these lizard things, which I now learned could be possessed by nightmares that I would have to knock out before I could do any damage to them. And I don't even know what was wrong with this one. Thanks again, Brock, for conveniently abandoning us during this section. We regrouped with Brock, and then it was on to the Forge.
Forge ahead!
Wow, that made my suffering worth it. Luckily, the easy way up was blocked by nightmare nests, so after clearing them, we headed forward.
What gets bigger, the more you take away from it.
Huh, that's tough. Even Mimir's neck is a stump. Sorry, I mean, even Mimir is stumped. But we made it to this lift, which Brock fixed up with some silvery stuff. And then some coppery stuff.
We're good! Crank it! Crank that soul, now I mean you! Crank that soul, now I mean you!
Oh, like crank the lever. And we met the Lady of the Forge. She took my blood, and I got a new spear. Meanwhile, Brock got the knowledge that he died. And he was missing part of his soul. Yeah, that sucks. Anyway, I got thrown into combat where the spear was amazing. Too amazing. The Draupnir spear starts out at level 5, so I couldn't use this. That made the first fight tough, but Brock was kind of the GOAT ally here. Fighting off the rest of the enemies on our way out wasn't too awful without the spear. I mean, it was, but relatively speaking, you know.
Shall we let Brock improve your gear before we go?
Shall I drop you off the sledge, Mimir? Okay, that was kind of harsh, I'm sorry. I will miss him though, best ally in the game. Odin pulled up to the Dwarven village, and he had some words, which I tuned out of after playing for so long. Some Einarjar ambushed me outside the village gate, and after running away, they caught up to me and I died. Still, I kinda got away with avoiding this fight by just running ahead because the game gave me a checkpoint, and I would take any breaks I could get here. Oh look, an optional fight. Back to Sindri's house we go. I showed Sindri my new spear, and the game gave me some great advice. Retire? You're right, I should stop playing this game. I did get a dream sequence with Faye that I zoned out of until the game gave me this sick transition back to Atreus. Now Atreus went with Thrud on a quest to Helheim, and like I said before, Atreus' health and rage were automatically upgraded, so that made this section so much easier.
Mom's gonna have a real tough time keeping me in Asgard after this.
Well yeah, cause Asgard's gonna be destroyed. Oh, also we freed this dog Garm who can tear through realms or something, but it's okay, we did it for a good reward. Nothing. Heimdall was not happy with me freeing the dog that tears realms, and neither was Thrud. Luckily, Odin was able to cheer Atreus up.
If you're not welcome here. Go.
And back at Brock and Sindri's, Hellwalkers were all over the place, so I switched back to Kratos to clear them out and unlocked a new rage mode, but I didn't really use it outside of when the game forced me to do so. The game gave a really wholesome moment, but then everyone was mad at me for freeing Garm, so we went back to do some father-son bonding by fighting Garm. Back to hell it was, but this time it can't hurt, right? It's Garmless. I had to fight through a bunch of Hellwalkers and some nightmares on the way to Garm, but at least some of them I could avoid by running. Oh look, there's Garm. But first, another fight. And why not an undead traveler too? And more Hell Raiders. And now the Garm fight began. Luckily, this one had a few checkpoints, so even though I died many times, he was pretty predictable. I did get one shot a few times, but still this didn't feel nearly as bad as some of the fights with large groups of enemies. After I finally killed Garm, he came back and I had to run. At this point of the fight, I did have to stun Garm with the spear or he wouldn't move, but otherwise when fighting him, I didn't really have to use the spear. After failing to kill Garm, Atreus put Fenrir's soul into him and our realm tear issue was solved.
Hello. I hope it's okay. I just came through this
Then it was back home and Atreus told everyone about Odin's mask.
I hope that I can be forgiven for not doing more when the Hellwalkers attacked.
No. Well, it was on to Vanaheim to help Freya and Freyr, but instead we met a boar, and no, I'm not talking about Tyr. I mean an actual shape-shifting boar, who we already met in the last game.
And then you shot me.
And I'll do it again. He warned us that there were Einarjar in the area, and told us that Skull and Hati were missing, so I had to find them too. Right out the gate, I was faced with another huntress who killed me on a loop until I finally learned her attacks, which were not very forgiving. These things also spawned in the middle of the fight, which distracted me enough to let the huntress kill me before I finally took her down. I had to kill some Gulan and Noken on my way to find Skull and Hati sleeping, so I guess the moon was missing. I fought some Einarjar and used up my rage, which I hoarded for most of the run, but in this case, I wish I did save more of my rage with what was coming ahead. I was almost starting to enjoy the game at this point, so now they decided to add enemies that can teleport out of nowhere to kill me. The enemies were big in number, and fighting off so many at once was seemingly impossible. Luckily, after an hour of grinding, I discovered an OP strat that would be a key thing for most encounters: environmental kills. You see, if I grabbed an enemy with chains and they were a low enough level, I could hit them in the air, and if I positioned myself just right, Kratos would push them over the edge where they would instantly die regardless of how much health they had. I wasn't invulnerable while doing this, so I still had to time it and try to get enemies alone, but this worked like a charm, and actually made fights like this one manageable. I could finally get the moon back, but first, this jerk stole it again and teleported away. I chased her out, killed more Einarjar, and then got locked into a fight with a wyvern, my second least favorite enemy type. Bro, you're beefing with a bird. Fortunately, this took less time to grind than the previous fight, but focusing on Einarjar jumping at me along with the wyvern's electric attacks was a major pain. I felt good taking it out, and could now deliver the moon back to Skull and Hati. Atreus shot an arrow to send Skull and Hati back to the sky, and it was nighttime. The wolves also gave us a scepter to call them whenever, so I guess I can change time of day now. I ran past some more enemies, and the game gave me a very generous checkpoint. That checkpoint didn't save me from having to fight these two Dreki though, and once again, multitasking was tough. Atreus also kept telling me to shield for an attack that was literally not blockable.
Shield up!
Come on, man. I beat the Dreki, and we finally made it back to Freya and were tasked with rescuing Freyr. Immediately, the game threw me into a fight with multiple Einarjar and some Wolvers. The first 3 Einarjar weren't a big deal since I could mostly just throw my axe at them and stay in this area. The Wolvers, on the other hand, were a major issue because they were super aggressive, could one-shot me, and took so many hits to kill. I mean, I didn't even have time to react to their attacks most of the time. Luckily, there was a strategy that could easily kill them, but it was very hard to pull off. This section had 1 rock for me to throw, and if I could get the Wolvers positioned just right, I could knock them both into this pit and kill them instantly. Sadly, this required a lot of luck and perfect timing, which meant I failed this many times. And even if I could pull off killing both Wolvers, more Einarjar spawned, including 1 teleporting guy. Okay, they literally did this to break my heart, man. Still, taking advantage of the environmental factors, like these poison plants, was key, and getting as far away from the Wolvers as possible, because I struggled even getting past them so many times. This fight actually got so frustrating, I almost considered quitting the challenge, but my suffering couldn't be for nothing. And sunken cost fallacy, you know. This fight was a mental battle, and even though in a normal playthrough it takes minutes, it took me over 5 hours for this one stupid section. I truly wish I was lying about that, but this is literally all footage from one fight. I beat it and continued, knowing that this might not even be the worst fight in Vanaheim. I changed the time of day, and despite this long fight, Freya still insisted we were in a hurry to save Freyr.
What are you doing? The bridge only grows in the daylight.
I wanted to see the wolves again.
Yeah, let me see the dogs. And after my slow grind in that last fight, I wiped it from my memory and fought off another group on my way to free Freyr. Ah, Needhog. Good memories. And I love when you don't solve a puzzle in 3 seconds and the game calls you a dumbass.
Maybe your spear can get us across.
Wow, thanks Freya. While Freya went to get Freyr, I came face to face with Heimdall.
I know you didn't want this, but we know how this ends.
With me crying, complaining, and wasting hours of my life, I first had to sacrifice his steed, Goldtopper, and for the actual fight, I did need to use the Draupnir spear. I tried to use it only when absolutely necessary, which meant at first I just decorated Heimdall's body with fireworks to stun him, and then I could use my chains and axe to bring his health down. At certain points in the fight, Heimdall had this shield which was immune to all attacks except for my spear. And yes, I tried punching him, but that did seemingly no damage. And I did see other players attempt this fight fists only, which seemed to break the shield, but given they either used upgrades or were not on Give Me God of War difficulty, I felt that trying this was either impossible or so absurdly difficult that it wouldn't even be fun to watch. Beating Heimdall's first stage wasn't too bad, and I ripped off his arm. How did he not see that coming? Is he dumb? Oh great, now he gets a cool arm. Heimdall had one more stage where he became slightly more aggressive, but even with that, I still killed him and forced Mimir to watch me strangle him. Also, why was Mimir even mad? Like, this wasn't the prophecy. Plus, no one likes Heimdall. I guess off-screen, Atreus and Freya allegedly were being useful for once and saved Freyr, but then it was straight into an ambush. Thank God this ambush had a checkpoint in the middle, because this gave me a lot of grief. I first had a big group of Einherjar, but the main problem was this teleporting heavy type that spawned with even more Einherjar. I had to watch for ranged attacks too, and hope this guy didn't teleport to me and knock my head off, like Mimir. All this while Freyr sat uselessly by the exit.
Sit tight. We'll figure something out.
No. Get your ass out the door. I had to dodge like a maniac, and these enemies were ridiculously aggressive. Freya, no. Why is she literally trying to get hit? This was another fight that took a couple hours, but I killed them all and carried Freyr like I was carrying this whole group. And on the way out, Berger sacrificed himself so we could escape. Okay, but just because he did that one thing, let's remember who the real hero is. It's still me.
We don't have to go straight home, do we?
We do. Back to Sindri and Brock's house, Tyr was acting weird and said since Kratos killed Heimdall, Odin was gonna be pissed. Oh wow, Tyr, how would you know that? But Atreus said the mask was the key, so back to Asgard we go. Jeez, Angerboda, give me a heads up. I introduced her to Fenrir and headed back to Asgard.
Heimdall's dead. Happen to know something about that?
Well, he was a really great guy with a lot of friends, so it's hard to say who killed him. Next, I needed to get Thor, who was drunk, so Thrud and I got into a bar fight where Atreus beat the hell out of this one guy. And Atreus and Thor had great banter.
Again with the griping.
Calling out a problem isn't griping. It's healthy.
We got the third part of the mask, and then Sif showed up.
Father murdered Heimdall.
Okay, what a snitch. Like, what does she have to gain from that? I hate her. Anyway, I escaped with the mask back to Sindri and Brock's house, and Tyr had a plan to infiltrate Asgard and use the mask.
I know I've been a burden to you all. I know you've questioned why you even pulled me out of that hole. I have duties.
Tyr, what the fuck? It was finally feeling like the endgame. Except it really wasn't with how much footage I recorded after this point. Like seriously, more than my last 3 videos combined. Tyr was acting sus, and Brock called him out to reveal that Tyr was actually Odin this whole time. Brock got the chop, and Odin escaped, though not with the mask. Kratos, you can't use the speed. Well, I guess that's fine.
Now we kill Odin. And anyone who gets in our way.
What? No, we can't kill Atreus. Now it was time to grieve and be sad until the plot could progress.
Everywhere I look, I'm reminded of my mistakes.
I mean, yeah, you made a lot of them, dude. Like, it's pretty bad. Sindri was understandably upset, but I couldn't focus on that. I was still mad that Mimir never figured out Brock's riddle.
We really are going to war.
What are we, some kind of gods of war? And it was now back to Freya to take down Odin, which meant everyone had to go to different realms to recruit an army. I got stuck with Muspelheim, which meant I needed to convince Surtur to kill himself and start Ragnarok. And that meant I had to grind through so many small fights on the way there and back. I was faced with a flame phantom, and for some reason I'm not sure, it simply killed himself.
Nice job.
So I considered that a win and went to meet Surtur, who was super friendly. Well, friendly like off camera, I guess. He forced us into a fight, and even with some frustrations, I pressed R3. I beat these Soul Eaters and Draugr to convince Surtur to help me with Ragnarok.
Right. Because you've got so much to live for.
Damn, Atreus, that's tough. We did manage to convince Surtur to kill himself with my blades, and after getting them in, I met Rist and Mist, 2 of Odin's Valkyries, who I now had to fight. They sort of shared health, so damaging one actually damaged both of them, but still, focusing on 2 bosses at once was brutal. Okay, now why is she spinning like a Beyblade? And I don't understand how it can counter an attack and still die. The parry timing in this fight felt very tight, like if I missed it by a half second, I was done. And to make matters worse, these 2 healed themselves after I beat the first phase, so I had to fight them multiple times. This really tested my ability to multitask, because not only did I have to fight Rist, I also had to watch TikTok, play Subway Surfers, eat Hot Chip, lie, feed my Nintendogs, and fight Mist. But somehow, even with this taking me hours to beat, it felt like I was already somewhat used to fighting off multiple enemies. Though I got occasional BS like this, and this. I mean, I countered, but I eventually took them down. And after taking down the Valkyries, I was given yet another difficult fight fight with multiple Einherjar and a Wyvern, who I mentioned earlier I hated. Throwing a Wyvern in kinda ruined everything, but this wasn't the first nor last fight where that was the case. I mean, I was 99% sure this showed a parry animation, but okay. And this Einherjar type is the worst. Since they were all like 4 or 5 levels above me, I couldn't counter any of their attacks, and the only thing I could do was spam dodge. I got so good at being a dodger, I thought I could hear the announcers glazing me. My strat here was to knock the Einherjar into the lava, which was annoying to pull off while dealing with multiple of them, plus a Wyvern, but it was the best strat I could come up with. I had another fight with more Einherjar, and thank God this guy just randomly died. I have no clue why, but I would need a small break before my next fight took me nearly 5 more hours. The main reason was a mix of mental mistakes and the fact I was spammed with multiple Einherjar, a Draupnir, and a mix of ranged and close attacks, along with the regular BS deaths. I had a couple of useful strats here that were hard to pull off with the number of enemies, but here's how I did it. First, I had to position myself just right and knock this Einherjar into the lava. After this, more enemies spawned in, and I had to dodge like crazy. The fastest way to kill them was wait until they mounted the Draupnir and knock them off right into the lava. I'd often get hit from behind or fail to push them over the edge, but when this worked, it was super effective. This took me like 3 days of attempts, but I got through it.
Brothers, how did it go?
Terrible, thanks for asking.
Is there anything you want to finish up?
The game, please, let me finish the game. Now it was time to head to battle with my army. After a little dream sequence, Kratos gathered the troops, and it was time for Ragnarok. I hope he plays hot to go. Freya, we're about to go to war. Muspelheim was tough, but this was a case of out of the frying pan and into the
fiery depths of hell. Your suffering shall know no end.
Dropping into this fight was near impossible with the millionth Wyvern that was absurdly aggressive. I had one strat that was kinda sketchy, but don't worry about it. If I climbed up this ledge, then jumped back down and ran back to the previous barrier, then climbed back up before dropping into the fight, this heavy would just immediately drop dead. This didn't help that much since the first 2 Einherjar were absurdly aggressive, and killing them only spawned a Wyvern and even more Einherjar, but it was something. Even with this strategy, I was getting demolished. I could probably make an hour-long video just of the deaths from this. It was really bad. At one point, I also got this other Einherjar to drop dead at the beginning, but I couldn't consistently make it happen. After hours of trying this section, I got extremely frustrated. I basically had not been using Resurrection Stones since we fought Garm, but this section made me use one again, which was super frustrating because I hit the shield button here. Still, I was so desperate after spending days on this one section and just took it. I gave the Wyvern a big hug, killed these last 2 Einherjar, and then headed to the next section.
Odin's new Valkyrie queen is Gna.
More like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. Only joking, I have so much gameplay left. The next section gave me an overly aggressive Einherjar captain and a troll. Also want to point out at first they're just fighting each other. Why did they unite against me? Wait, that's what Odin's saying about me and Freya.
Has taken so much from us.
Huh. Once I got the troll's health low enough, more Einherjar spawned in. I could kill the troll, but I now had 4 additional Einherjar to deal with. And yeah, this was tough. One of them spawned in right before the captain died, and killing one of them with the troll was key to making this manageable. Still, I'd have to deal with at least 3 enemies at once, and constantly dodging them was a pain when stuff like this happened. Thanks, Freya. I got a lucky run with the troll killing a guy, and that was all it took to finally beat this. Oh look, a giant snake. And now on to my next section of torture. This one started off with a single Einherjar on a Draupnir. I wasted a bunch of time fighting them before realizing I could launch the Einherjar into the water to insta-kill him, but the game was super glitchy when I tried to pull him off the steed here, and sometimes I just dragged him in to hit me. After dealing a little over 1 bar of health from this thing, 3 more Einherjar spawned in, including the worst enemy type in the game by a lot. Just spammed unblockable attacks where if I didn't dodge perfectly, I would get hit in the next 4 immediate swings. After these 3 Einherjar spawned though, I just needed to kill 1 more, and then a dragon would spawn. I had to wait a minute for it to perch, but then I needed to use a spear to destroy the perch, which would allow me to escape this section. And it turned out that this was very hard. Even just getting the dragon to spawn took so long because I had to focus on all the enemies and rush to get the spear thrown, or I would get killed by dragon fire. It took me way too long, but I persevered and beat this stupid fight. And Sindri was here, but there was no way I would actually fight anything else unless I had to. And I had to. At least Surtur finally showed up though. And I found out Odin put more people in our way to die. Oh no. Anyway, I got to play as Atreus for 3 seconds, go bear mode 1 more time, and then saw through. But Sif came to my defense. Love Sif. I never said I hated you, and that you were useless, and your hair was messy, and your son was ugly, and then I had to deal with another section with maybe 10 enemies spawning in that took me so long. The strategy was basically to try launching them off this little ledge to get quick kills, but multiple enemies made it likely I'd get hit by someone when baiting another enemy to the ledge. Now, the Einherjar also had elemental protection, and there were once again multiple of the worst enemy type. I got past this section to the next, and the checkpoint glitched. More than once. Even though I beat this part several times, the game decided to not give me a checkpoint past it since I technically didn't kill everyone and left the area as soon as the path cleared. This also made no sense because at first it did give me the checkpoint and then it just randomly took it away. Why are they playing in my face like that? I had to waste even more time on the previous section to clear it out and then got a new checkpoint that didn't glitch this time. Luckily, Thrud was super helpful and killing this wyvern wasn't too bad. And since I was working with Thrud, that meant Thor was going to be a clown and forced me to fight him. Wow, another big time waste before the final boss fight. It only took a couple of hours to beat this and felt less painful since the health bar made me feel like I was actually making some progress. Plus, I could learn Thor's attack patterns, which consisted mostly of spamming lightning. Thor basically just started to spam attacks more and more as the fight went on, plus the game hated me. But with a lot of dodging, I beat Thor.
We must be better.
You guys had to fight for that long just to realize this. As soon as we made a truce, Odin killed Thor, and now I had to fight him. You really couldn't have killed Thor before I wasted all that time fighting him. Odin's first stage wasn't too bad, and actually didn't take that much time, but his second stage was also not that bad. After slashing away at Odin, I got him down to 1 bar of health, and then Freya came in and choked him, which backfired because Odin had a choking kink. Wait, who wrote that? No, that's not what... And after Atreus broke the mask that Odin was obsessed with, he got pissed. What the hell was that? His final 2 stages took me many more tries, and basically he just spammed attacks over and over. Every boss in the game had a 1 BS attack, and Odin's was this honing attack where I had to sort of roll forward because going sideways did this. I got super close to beating Odin and Pain. Okay, this was sort of my fault because I kind of dodged into him, but still, game ruining attack. Honestly, not much strategy to this fight except dodge like crazy because he spammed so many unblockable attacks. I also had to deal with the elements on the floor, dodging his whip, dodging these floating orbs, and he had 3 different elemental shields I had to break. 1 for the axe, 1 for the chains, and 1 for the spear. Though, unlike the Heimdall fight, I was actually able to break through this without the spear, it just took a lot longer. And after completely burning myself out, I beat Odin. Kratos gave Freya Odin's soul, and our group played Smash or Pass. Odin. Oh, and finally Ragnarok arrived. And what is this POV shot from Kratos' chest? Freyr sacrificed himself to let us escape Ragnarok, I guess, and then Atreus woke up with Air standing over him. We had to do a meet and greet with like every notable character, and these ones, and then made it to Angrboda, who showed us Loki's shrine. Atreus decided he had to go find the rest of the giants alone, so post-game would no longer be with Atreus. We had one final father-son bonding moment, but wait, Kratos had a shrine, and it turned out he was meant to be the Allfather 2.0 or something, but like not evil. God of War? More like the Godfather? Wait, no, someone already did that. Alright, so this is what the skill tree looks like if you don't spend any XP. Over 100k unused for Kratos and 13k for Freya. And here's all my weapons and armor. But if that's not enough proof for you, check out the video in the description where I'll include the full footage of every boss fight and every hard fight in the game, which is a lot of them. No upgrades. This was pain. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like seeing challenges like this, be sure to subscribe to Epic Cakes Gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.